Let's face it, on-call firefighting at 2 a.m. is stressful. So there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that you probably can't prevent incidents from happening, but the good news is that Incident.io makes incidents less stressful and a lot more valuable. Incident.io is a Slack-native incident management platform that allows you to automate incident processes, focus on fixing the issues, and learn from incident insights to improve site reliability and fix your vulnerabilities. Try Incident.io to recover faster and sleep more. Every cloud provider has something vexing that they just won't fix. AWS has its obnoxious billing surprise problem. Google Cloud struggles to talk to customers who aren't spending a fortune with them already. Oracle Cloud stubbornly refuses to set Larry Ellison adrift on an ice floe. And Microsoft Azure just will not get with the program around security. Azure has suffered a number of serious vulnerabilities over the past year. By my count, 5 of those, ChaosDB, Synlapse, AzureScape, AutoWarp, and Extra Replica, have breached the boundary between different Azure customer accounts. This is, needless to say, very bad. The entire premise and promise of cloud completely falls apart as soon as another customer can see or, good Lord, alter your data. Let's start with some empathy, because let's face it, nobody sets out to build something insecure except maybe a cryptocurrency exchange. The engineers responsible for a lapse no doubt feel crappy about it, and shaming people for their work isn't great. That said, there's more than one engineer at Azure. Security issues are the result of systemic failure rather than one person having a bad day. We, by which I mean I, want companies to take security seriously. But when we take a look at the recently launched Open Cloud Vulnerability and Security Issue Database, it's clear that the severity and frequency of Azure exploits significantly outweighs those of its hyperscale competitors. These issues are across different products, meaning that it's extremely unlikely that they're the result of one disaster-prone engineer floating around the company. Given the cadence of exploits cropping up on Azure, it's rather apparent that build it now, patch it later has been the approach for far too long. But security has to be built into software and platforms like cloud providers from the beginning. It's not something that you can buy or bolt on after the fact. This isn't Windows 98. People expect better from their cloud providers than a monthly litany of cross-account access vulnerabilities. Something is profoundly wrong with Azure's security culture. I don't know how to go about fixing it, but as an uninvolved observer, the problem is obvious. The systemic security issues are bad enough, but where my sympathy goes out the window is when I'm reading the disclosure timelines and realize just how little Azure apparently cares about the security of its platform or customers. We've seen multiple cases where Microsoft takes more than a month just to give a security researcher an initial response to many of these issues. There are weeks of back and forth from that point onward. In a few notable cases, the initial patch that Microsoft rolled out to Azure was either trivially bypassable or didn't even fix the problem. In the most recent cross-tenant issue as of this recording, Palo Alto Networks' Unit 42 reports that they told Microsoft about FabricScape on January 30th of 2022, and Azure patched the problem on June 14th, 2022. This stands in stark contrast to my own experiences reporting possible security issues. When I've passed on concerns that touch security to folks at Google Cloud and AWS, they respond with the same gravity as if I'd reached out to complain about a fire in their building. Usually I've been wrong about the concern, which is a good reason to always frame a report as I'm seeing something odd, as opposed to you folks have a massive security problem. You're going to eat far less crow. On the rare occasions where I've been right, I've had nothing but positive, speedy experiences as a result. I come bearing ill tidings. Developers are responsible for more than ever these days. Not just the code that they write, but also the containers and the cloud infrastructure that their apps run on, because serverless means it's still somebody's problem. And a big part of that responsibility is app security from code to cloud. And that's where our friend Snyk comes in. Snyk is a frictionless security platform that meets developers where they are, finding and fixing vulnerabilities right from the CLI, IDEs, repos, and pipelines. Snyk integrates seamlessly with AWS offerings like Code Pipeline, EKS, ECR, and more, as well as things you're likely to actually be using. Deploy on AWS, secure with Snyk. Learn more at snyk.co/scream. That's SNYK.co/scream. This, of course, brings us to the quality of Azure's responses when a security issue is reported. For example, Azure's response to the AutoWarp vulnerability was, Microsoft has not detected evidence of misuse of tokens. You can read that as, we've conducted an exhaustive log analysis and determined conclusively that this issue has not been exploited, or we have no evidence that this has been exploited, or what even are logs? Contrast this with the public statement that AWS made during its superglue exploit. It said unequivocally, analysis of logs going back to the launch of the service have been conducted, and we have conclusively determined that the only activity associated with this issue was between accounts owned by the researcher. No other customers' accounts were impacted. As a customer, one of those two security responses fills me with confidence. The other does not. I've been told repeatedly that I seem to be one of the only people expressing public concern about the subpar, read as crap, quality of Azure's security responses. To that, all I can say is, no duh. I'm not a security researcher, and I don't partner with any company in this space. What's Microsoft going to do to me? Hike the cost of my Office 365 licenses at renewal time? On the other hand, security companies and almost everyone else who cares about cloud or computers has to do business in various ways with the cloud providers, particularly Microsoft. Other folks can't afford to antagonize these big companies, make them excessively mad, or editorialize about vulnerabilities at risk of being shut out of future opportunities, conversations, or briefings. But Azure shouldn't read the public lack of reaction as a lack of concern. Not to turn this into the lurkers support me in email, but a number of folks who represent very large enterprise customers are appalled at this. They choose not to post about these concerns publicly, presumably preferring instead to drag Microsoft execs over the coals in more private settings, but they are very much aware of them and they're not happy. I don't have a particular horse in the cloud race, believe it or not. I cover AWS because today it's where the expensive problems are that I know how to fix. Should the industry shift, I will as well. What I want to see is a future in which there are multiple excellent options for cloud providers rather than a monoculture or a duopoly. Issues like this make me fearful for the future of cloud as a whole because Azure is insecure is indistinguishable from the cloud is insecure for folks who aren't steeped in this world. Azure's got to do better, and the rest of us need to get louder about Azure's shortcomings until it does.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.